Hi, my name is Taylor Eichhoff. I'm an elementary education major here at Lincoln, Nebraska, and I have been student teaching at McPhee Elementary School in a second grade classroom. Today I'm going to talk to you about my theme is teaching diverse learners. I will talk about my competency statement, some big ideas and questions that I've thought about throughout this process, some artifacts turned to evidence that has helped me, and what I've learned, how I can connect it to my teaching, and what short-term and long-term goals I have for myself. So to start, my competency statement is that I am competent at accommodating the diverse needs of learners in order to provide equitable access to instruction. So while I was thinking about this competency statement, I had some questions to help guide my thought process. I thought, how can all children be successful in achieving their academic and behavior goals? Then I thought, how can I, as a professor or as a teacher, create effective ways to implement successful adaptations for student learning? And then the biggest question that kind of resonated with me the most as a teacher is, what students might I be missing and why? How will I know if I'm missing learners? And what knowledge, skills, and strategies can I put in place in order to make sure all learners are learning to their best of their ability, being successful? So that brings me into my first artifact. I like to call this the wiggle wedge. It comes from my first practicum at Hill Elementary School in a fourth grade classroom. I had a student who really liked to get up out of his seat a lot, didn't quite like to stay in one spot during instruction. So we just noticed that was making it hard for him to learn and get the instruction that we're wanting him to receive. And then in turn, it was distracting the other people that were around him. So we thought, me and my CT, we got together, we talked about what can we do to make this student successful in their learning. We know that they need to get up and move around. So we thought of this wiggle wedge here. It's a little blow-up seat cushion you can put on their chair. The student can rock back and forth, front and sideways, whichever way they want, while still sitting in their chair and still being able to learn. So we implemented this, and we noticed that the student was staying in his chair for longer throughout the day. His attention to the material was increasing. And then we noticed through formative and summative assessments that he was just doing better overall in the subject area. So this artifact kind of was the beginning point of my understanding of diverse learners. As like a beginning teaching student, when I thought of diversity, I thought of just culturally diverse students. I didn't realize that diversity meant so much more. It meant the needs of students are just different. Some students need to move around to learn. And then that brings me to my second artifact that comes from my time at Human Elementary School in a second grade class. It was my second practicum. We had a student come to us who was new to the building. So we didn't really know much about her. We didn't have a first grade teacher to go ask, how does this student do? So we pulled her file, and we noticed that she moved around from school to school quite a bit. So we didn't have a firm grasp of understanding of her. So I knew that I needed to kind of pay a lot of close extra attention to her. While in writing one day, I noticed something that really concerned me. She wasn't able to write her name correctly. And for a second grader, that went off as a big red flag to me. So I started paying more attention. I started working closely with her, asking her while we were writing friendly letters to write me simple words or phrases. We're spelling wouldn't matter. I just wanted to see how she could phonetically and phonemically process and how she processed her writing and put words onto paper. While doing this, I noticed some even bigger red flags. She wasn't able to identify certain letters. She didn't have all her letter sounds. So then as a teacher, I realized teaching the student how to write a friendly letter isn't what she needed right now. I realized she needed to learn what the letter Y is, how to recognize it, what sound does it make, how do you write it. I noticed she needed to learn the alphabet. So we went through the alphabet song. We know A, apple, and we went through every letter, hoping that she would then get that sound and identification. And we did this in a notebook that looked just like her peers' notebooks, but then on the inside, it was different materials that just better fit the needs for her instruction. So this artifact turned evidence taught me what it meant for academically diverse learners, that not every student comes to you at the same level, and that as a teacher, we shouldn't expect them to. And we need to be there to accommodate our lessons for her. My next artifact then comes from my student teaching experience this year at McPhee Elementary School. In my second grade class, I have a large number of students who are English language learners. About a third of our class is either a level 1 or level 2 English language learner. So there's not much of that foundation of English. We have some students who have reading goals. So just reading is a hard part for a lot of my students. So as a teacher, I realized there's something I need to do to help those students. I need to accommodate my lessons. I can't expect them to do everything that I'm thinking right away. So we incorporate sentence stems. This first one was used in a unit studies lesson about seed dispersal. Seed dispersal is kind of a tough subject, even for students whose English is their first language. I mean, dispersal is a tough area. So we came up with a stem. One partner was the seed, and she would say, my seed is, and then the seed she researched. That was her part where she would input. And then we gave her the frame. I think it would be dispersed by, and then we allow the students to input what they think. We also do this in a reading with these sentence stems. We were talking about rhyming one day, so we would give them the stem, the words blank and blank rhyme. So the students would input the words cat and hat rhyme, whatever they learned and whatever they thought. So that was my third artifact, and that hit on that students are linguistically diverse, as well as there's just so many different types of diversity that a student can be. Every student is different. So what I reflected on throughout this process, what I learned, is that I can use resources in my room and building to help meet the needs of all my students. With this little blow-up seat here, I had to meet with different students. I had to meet with different teachers about what would be best. I learned how to accommodate for my lower level students. Right here with our writing notebook, I had to accommodate my writing lesson plan to best fit what she needed to learn at the time. I learned how to accommodate my lessons for English language learners down here. And some things I still need to learn. I want to become better at using research-based strategies to help the needs of all my students and be more mindful about implementing those. I need to continue to enhance my ability to change my teaching based on formative and summative assessments. And I want to accommodate my lessons more for higher level learners too. So big ideas I came up with throughout this is that every student has particular strengths and challenges as a learner, and it's my responsibility as a teacher to plan and accommodate instruction with these in mind. If I use a student's strengths instead of their weaknesses, then they're going to be able to learn based off of that. Another big idea that I had is that I've learned as a teacher, I'm able to see my students' needs and make the necessary accommodations for them to be successful. I know that I can discover their strengths and challenges in order to best help them. I know as a teacher that I can do that. And then some short-term and long-term goals I have for myself is, a short-term goal is to read this book, Teach Like a Champion 2.0. I was gifted it at the end of my student teaching experience. I have learned that there's lots of research-based strategies in this book that I would just like to grow in myself. And long-term, I'd like to continue my education, whether that's through a master's degree or just through extra classes. I think that as a teacher, we're asking our students to be lifelong learners, that I should also be a lifelong learner and continue my education. So this is where I landed on teaching diverse learners.